In Ottawa, all mothers are hockey mothers, but my mother was forced into early retirement when my brother decided to quit the league when he was 14. And unfortunately, for my parents, I'm not an athlete, and it wasn't very much fun for them to cheer me on when I was doing the things I wanted to do, like religiously consume the entire TGIF TV lineup. But they did often encourage me to pull my pants up really high and to put on my mom's giant glasses and get up in front of all the patrons of Swiss Chalet and do my Steve Urkel impression. And I'd do it. And I'd kill it to the point where, to think of it now, I actually am concerned that I might have peaked as a performer at age 10. But my mother and I did end up finding common ground over the monomania of Thai Beanie Babies in the mid and late 1990s. They had an obvious appeal to her as a farm girl baby boomer who had slowly worked her way up to the middle class. They were sacks, animal-shaped sacks filled with beans, and but also hope. And they were collectibles that held the promise that they might one day, maybe, possibly in the distant future, be worth slightly more than you paid for them. They were stuffed animals, but with upward social mobility. So they were like the American dream, just trademarked. So quickly, she became a Beanie Baby zealot, and she would channel her rabid intensity that usually she had reserved for hockey referees into collecting toys. And so where once she would have yelled to the ice, "Get in there!" she now would yell into a phone receiver, "Hold that Quackers the duck." But then they wouldn't hold it, and so she'd say, "I'll be there in 30 minutes," and they'd see her in 25. She was a slightly hunched 50-year-old body of frenetic energy whose superpower was aggressive shopping. And it didn't take long before a black market of counterfeit Beanie Babies started to develop. So to maintain the authenticity of your Beanie Baby, you had to ensure that the heart-shaped Thai trademark tag remained intact. But this was just like basic Beanie Baby knowledge. Everybody knew that. But every now and then, it wasn't uncommon to receive as a gift a tagless Beanie Baby from some Thai neophyte who just knew that you liked Beanie Babies. And I'd take it, and I'd smile, and I'd say, "Thank you." And I'd put it on the shelf with my other Beanie Babies, and I would love it in this tainted kind of way. And look at it in the same way that my parents, years later, would look at me once they had realized that I had let some teenage boy take my tags off. Nearing the end of the decade, when the Y2K hysteria was mounting, the Beanie Baby phenomenon was also peaking. This is also around the time that my brother was hitting puberty, and then holes into walls, and then just generally being what my parents would refer to as a handful. And they started to get exhausted, and their latent guilt over not being able to spend as much time with me as they wanted would often manifest itself as a Beanie Baby under my pillow. So my brother would drop out of high school, and I'd get Sly the Fox. Or my brother would get caught stealing, and I'd get Fortune the Panda. My brother would break out of rehab, and I'd get Slippery the Seal. And in true WASP tradition, they never talked to me about what was going on. But I understood the deal, and as you can probably guess, I was totally on board because I didn't need family time. Anytime I wanted family time, I knew I had the Tanners and the Winslows and the Huxtables, and that they would embrace me like I was their wacky next door neighbor. That my Beanie Baby collection grew to be worth a small fortune should be a good indication to you of how things worked out with my brother. My mother, she'd spend either her whole day lying in bed or else she would fixate on a specific Beanie Baby, like the commemorative Princess Diana bear. And she'd go out until she'd find it, and then she'd bring me home 2 of them. And we would put on these heart-shaped plastic tag protectors, and then we'd put them in these individual display cases, and then we'd put the display cases on the top shelf, and we would wait for our beanstalks to grow. And they did. For a while they did, and to the point where my father felt the need to build me a beautiful custom cabinet specially fitted for Beanie Babies right into the wall of my bedroom. We were protecting our investment, but to the point, and with so much anxiety that it became apparent that we had become the white suburban middle class embodiment of mo money, mo problems. Which reminds me of a story that happened to a friend of mine, which, okay, if you just indulge me for a second, it's an interlude. By all accounts, Steve was a genius, though, I mean, some people, obviously his social skills he was a little dumb in the social department. And God, that guy was just so accident prone. And his next door neighbor, Carl, was a police officer and a family man who often got caught up in the fallout of Steve's latest cockamamie invention. Like this one time, and this is just so typical of these two. But Steve took Carl for a ride in his time machine back 20 years. And he told Carl not to mess with the past, but Carl, he left himself a note to make some investments that he knew were gonna skyrocket, and he rewrote history, and he was the richest man in the world. But that's not even the end, because even though Carl now had more money than he could ever spend in his entire life, he soon realized that he had made a horrible mistake, because I guess the money had gotten to his head, and his wife Harriet was about to divorce him, and he realized, worst of all, that his children had never even been born. And okay, I know, like, Eddie didn't get the best grades in school, and Laura was more than a little boy crazy, and Judy, I mean, she was so non-essential to the plot that she actually mysteriously disappeared at the end of the 4th season without so much as an explanatory line of dialogue about, like, I don't know, like a car crash or, you know, more aptly, accidental ingestion of an invisibility serum. But anyway, the point is that Carl took the time machine and he used it to go back in time to fix his mistake. And so he was once again just a working class guy with a loving family and minute-to-minute cues for hijinks. And you know what? He didn't even miss the money, because guess what, people? Money doesn't matter. Family matters, right? That's the lesson we all just learned. Did we learn that lesson? So what does that mean about Beanie Babies? I'll tell you what it means. It means that a month before New Year's Eve, 1999, my house burned to the ground, which I'm pretty sure none of you are expecting. In one of our family euphemisms that we had adopted for things like my mother's periodically insomniac nature, well, she was known around the house as a light sleeper. So, so logically, she was the first person awake at 3:30 in the morning to hear the sounds of a 5-story fire that had started in the building right behind my parents' house and was in the process of just casually burning down half the block without even setting off a single fire alarm. So she runs down to my room and she opens my blinds and she shows to me this bright orange wall of fire that's just right on the other side of my too hot to touch bedroom window that was starting to crack from the heat. And she just says some hysterical version of like, this is a problem. We should leave. So here are a few sweeping generalizations about what happens when your house is burning down. You wake up your family and you put the leash on the dog and you throw a windbreaker over your gerbil's cage, and when you open the door and you realize that it's literally raining fire from the sky, you don't see a biblical allusion because you're 12 and your parents were lazy about bringing you to church. So, and anyway, all you can think about is how am I going to get from here to the minivan outside without getting rained on by fire? But you do it. And you're okay. And 13 houses burned to the ground, but nobody dies. And every one of your Beanie Babies is gone. But you don't really care because despite your best efforts, you'd already started to outgrow them. And you gotten interested in things like blue eyeshadow and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. There's a saying that goes something like, every time God burns down a door, he also burns down a window. And then you get to live in a hotel that has a pool, so shut the fuck up, this is awesome. But I don't believe in God. But I do believe that houses are flammable. And that when they burn down, people give you lots of gifts. And that you feel kind of famous when your dad is quoted in the Ottawa Citizen explaining some elaborate metaphor that the insurance company had told him about cupboards. And your mother, in her impressive ability to make lemonade out of lemons, she finds a new investment hobby, flipping houses. Soon after that, the Beanie Baby bubble burst, and what was once worth, people thought, thousands of dollars, you can now buy on eBay, even the most precious of Beanie Babies, for just a couple dollars. And they're all in mint condition, and they all have the heart-shaped trademark tie tags hanging off of them like foreclosure signs. Just recently, I talked to my dad, and he told me about how just a few days after the fire, once the remains had cooled to the point where they could let the families dig through the ashes, he pulled out what he determined was my mangled IKEA bed frame, a metal bed frame. And he says he remembered thinking to himself, this could have been my daughter. And when he told me that, I said, Dad, I just called to ask you about if you remember about the time that Mom went crazy about the Beanie Babies. And he said, your mother. That's it.